Wow, I love the room you're calling from.
Yeah, this is the office.
I love the Jaws bedspread
Oh yes, I just got a
and
ton of Jaws stuff.
and the posters, and wow, it is just heaven in there.
Yes,
It is pop culture heaven. It's like my childhood threw up on your walls.
thank you. This is the best I've heard. Well, my name's Jessica Dwyer, and I am with HorrorHound magazine, and we've covered a ton of work by you and, of course, your
Thank
father.
you.
I felt this was appropriate. So my first question, because I absolutely love this short story, but the movie just blew my mind, was taking what led you to take who is considered one of the most iconic heroic types and flip that on its head with this.
Well, before I get into that, so you're wearing a Salem's Lot t-shirt. I just want to say, and a great one at that, um, I believe the actor who played Barlow in the 79 Salem's Lot was an actor named
Reggie,
Reggie
y-
Nadler,
yeah,
who he'd actually been tragically burned. But he didn't, but he went on being an actor and played a lot of heavies and villains and stuff like that. I think it's kind of interesting. I love that Nosferatu style
oh
Dracula.
yeah,
That vision of the king vampire, I think, is really powerful. And so I was glad that in Abraham's Boys, when we do see Dracula,
he
uh,
looks like that.
it's that one. It's the Reggie Nadler, Barlow, Kurt Barlow, Max Schreck in Murnau's Nosferatu that we're getting. This is a, for some, I was saying to someone earlier, this is the new horror geek fight. The old horror geek fight used to be fast zombies or slow zombies. But the new one is Dracula supposed to look like Nosferatu,
Yep,
or is he supposed to look like Bela Lugosi?
right.
And I
Yeah.
definitely go with the creepy sort of, you know,
The
evil, you know,
almost like a parasite looking.
almost like a parasite. It's like a parasite. There's something parasitic looking about this, smooth, gleaming skull, pointy-eared thing coming at you. Anyway, what was your question? You
I
had a
mean,
question. What
I
was the
did.
question?
What led you to take this heroic archetype of a character that everybody goes, "Oh, Van Helsing's he's the good guy."
Yeah.
And I was telling Natasha before, I never felt that way completely 100% with Van Helsing in any iteration, really, but especially the Dan Curtis Dracula version. He had a sadistic streak in him. Like,
Yeah.
there's moments where he's like too happy about this.
This is a guy who spends his nights, his Friday night, his idea of a great Friday night is creeping up to a coffin, throwing off the lid, surprising, the young lady sleeping inside, banging a hammer through her chest while she screams, chopping off her head and stuffing garlic in her mouth. Me, I'm more of a sit at home and watch Netflix type guy on Friday night. Okay, but Van Helsing has different ideas. We know he's heroic because we know we've been taught that vampires are obviously evil, and so killing them is like a public service. But when you think about it, he does spend his Friday nights pretty much the same way Ted Bundy spent his Friday nights, you know? And so I had this question from the start about who he really was and how he wound up this way. And most of all, what would it be like if he was your dad? Can you imagine if growing up in the shadow of that? In terms of how I came to write this story, though, my answer is really depressing. The depressing answer is money and desperation. That's how I wound up writing the story. I, I,
Honesty's great.
I wrote the story 23 years ago. At the time, I was a failed novelist. I had written 4 novels, and no one wanted to buy them. The only thing I had managed to do is I had started to write short stories, and I knew those short stories were good. And some of those short stories got in best of collections, and some of them won prizes. And so I felt like maybe I don't know how to write a novel, but I have figured out how to write a good short story. I know I can write a good short story. A movie was coming out with Hugh Jackman about Van Helsing. An editor named Gene Cavalos decided to have a collection, an anthology of stories about Van Helsing to cash in on the movie. It was a chance to, it was not an official tie-in, but it was a chance to cash in on the publicity around the film. Um, I read about the collection in the back of Writer's Digest, and I thought I'm getting in that fucking collection. Because I knew it had a big publisher behind it, and it was going to be in bookstores all over the country. And I thought, I'll get paid a lot of money for a short story. Um, in perspective, it was actually $150, so it wasn't like, I couldn't retire on it. But I thought I'll get paid a decent paycheck for it, and it will help raise my profile. So that's why I wrote Abraham's Boys. And it was just, I knew the collection was about Van Helsing. And so the question was just, what do I have to say about the guy? What is my version? What is my take on him? And writers have certain motifs they return to again and again. They have certain questions that they keep asking. One of the questions I find myself asking a lot is, I'll look at someone extraordinary and unusual, um, you know, um, and wonder what would it be like to be his kid? What would it be like to what would it be like to grow up in the shadow of that person? What would it be like if Van Helsing was your father? I myself have an extraordinary, unusual American father, and it's just a natural question that occurs to me all the time. And my conclusion about Van Helsing is it wouldn't be very nice. If he was your father, it wouldn't be very nice, and so that's kind of what I tried to explore.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Joe, for doing this. I loved the film, and I just loved the story as well. And basically taking Van Helsing and switching the script to where he is the epitome of Victorian, that entire era. There's so much
Villainies.
there's so much there, and it's just
Victorian hypocrisy.
hypocrisy. Yeah, that's why I was like, this is my notepad during the movie. And
You you've got like 8 questions there, but what you didn't know is you asked me one question and then it was going to be like this geyser, and then you never really got to the other seven.
no,
Sorry.
that's all good. That's all good. No, thank you so much though. This, like I said, I loved reading into it. We talked about the Jack the Ripper aspect of it as well because it very heavily Natasha and I did because
It's
it
like,
was so
don't you think Van Helsing was probably the Ripper?
yes, or at
Like,
least
doesn't the
one of
short
the cult
story and the film
members.
they sort of imply he's the Ripper? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big spoiler for people who haven't seen the film. So if you're reading this article, if you're seeing it, just ignore that we said that.
Yeah, just skip this part for
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
come back. But again, thank you so much. This was so great and I love the film. A fantastic job. Thank you for all you've created.
Oh, that's very kind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you guys. Bye.